Hare Krishna, Namaste. Chapter 15 is entitled as Purushottama Vidya, Purushottama Yogam. Sloka 6, Part 2. Na tat bhāsayate sūryo, na śaśāṅko na pāvakaḥ, yad gatvā na nivartante, tad dhāma paramaṁ. That supreme abode of mine is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. This sloka describes about the spiritual world, the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, which is known as Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrindavana. In the spiritual sky, there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, fire, or electricity, because all the planets are self-luminous, meaning they shine, they reflect light by themselves. Whereas, when we compare the spiritual world with our world, our universe, the sun, which is the only planet that is self-luminous, all other planets are not. Therefore, the material world is jada, whereas the spiritual world is ajada, meaning it doesn't require another aid like a light, sun, moon to be recognized. Whereas in this world, we need a sun to see things, we need a moon to see things, we need electricity, we need sensory organs to see things. Therefore, it is jada, which means it is not self-illuminous, it is not swayam prakasha. And also, we learned that the spiritual world called Nitya Vibhuti, Vaikunta, Paramapada, with different names, it does not recognize itself. Therefore, it is parak. Whereas the Jivatma and Paramatma cognize themselves. Therefore, they are pratyak. Then we also learnt that Jivatma and Paramatma are chit, that is, they are sentient being, which means they possess knowledge, jnana, whereas the spiritual world, which is known as Nitya Vibhuti, is achit, non-sentient, therefore it doesn't possess knowledge. This is what we have covered in our previous session. Now we are going to see more details about the spiritual world. During this session, we may interchangeably use names like spiritual world, Paramapada, Vaikunta, Goloka, Nitya Vibhuti. All these are pointing to the same spiritual world. Before we enter into learning the spiritual world, let's do a quick recap of Prakriti. Prakriti is that which possesses the three gunas, namely Sattva Guna, Rajo Guna, Tamo Guna. Because it possesses these gunas, Prakriti is also well referred as Mishra Sattva, meaning that which has Sattva Guna mixed with Rajoguna and Tamoguna. That's known as Mishra Sattvam. For Prakriti, therefore, we'll be interchangeably using terms like Prakriti, Pradhana, material world, Mishra Sattva, Samsara, so forth. In this material world, there is nothing that exists without the mix of these three gunas. Nothing exists purely as sattva or purely as rajas or purely as tamas. They three are always together. The degree of each of them varies. That's all. Therefore, the Prakriti is well known as Mishra Sattva. When the creation takes place, from Prakriti comes Mahan, from Mahan comes Ahankara, and this Ahankara is divided into Sattvika Ahankara, Rajasa Ahankara, Tamasa Ahankara. From Sattvika Ahankara comes 11 Indriyas, Pancha Jnanendriya, Pancha Karmendriya, and Manas. From Tamo Guna comes Pancha Tanmatra and Pancha Bhuta. It makes it total of 24 elements, material elements. These are different forms of the same Prakriti, Mula Prakriti. Like how a sand takes the form of a pot, a wall, a ground, etc. Likewise, this Mishra Sattva, the Prakriti, at one stage it is Mahan, then in the next stage it is Ahankara, then in another stage it is Pancha Bhuta, etc. Mishra Sattva will be the right name for this Prakriti to be identified as, because that describes the essential nature of the material world, the Prakriti. For example, we call this is pot, but when this pot breaks into pieces, it is no more called as pot. It is churna, powder. But when we mix some water and few other ingredients to the churna, it can become a wall. Then it is no more called as churna. It is a wall or a brick. Therefore, it is not pot, it is not churna, it is not a brick, because it kept changing, but its essential nature has not changed, and it is the sand or a clay or a mud. It is the sand which turned into pot. Even at that time, the sand is same, and when the pot was broken into pieces, it is still the same sand. And when the pieces or the powder churna was changed into brick, and still the sand is same. So the essential nature of the pot, churna and the brick is sand. Likewise, for ease purpose, we call this material world as Prakriti, but actually it is appropriate to call it as Mishra Sattva. Why? Because the Prakriti is one which changes into all these 24 elements. As it changes, what remains, what is present in all these elements are these gunas, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas, which are mixed and present in these different forms of the Prakriti. That is, the three gunas are present in Prakriti, Mahan, Ahankara, Panchabhuta, and in everything. Therefore, it is Mishra Sattva. Using these Panchabhuta, earth, water, fire, air, ether, through the process of Panchikarna, the Lord has created this world. Panchikarna means mixing of these 5 elements in certain proportion. Each universe has 14 planetary systems: Satyaloka, Tapaloka, Janaloka, Maharloka, Swargloka, Bhuvarloka, Bhuloka. Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala and Patala, which makes it 14 planets. Like this, there are unlimited universes are there in this material world. All these are covered by water, then fire, then air, then akasha, then ahankara tattva, then mahat tattva, and then finally the moola prakriti. All these together are known as Leela Vibhuti. The spiritual world is referred as Nitya Vibhuti, and whereas the material world is referred as Leela Vibhuti. Vibhuti means opulence or property, like a person owning a house, a car, a land. Those becomes that person's Vibhuti, opulence. Likewise, there are 2 Vibhutis. One is called Nitya Vibhuti, that is the spiritual world. Another one is called Leela Vibhuti, which is the material world. And please remember, when we use the term world, it is not just one planet. We are talking about the entire creation, material creation, which has unlimited universes, and each universe have many planets within it. So let's not limit our idea to a single planet when we say world. Leela Vibhuti is a property of Lord for his Leela, for his pastimes, like a playground, whereas Nitya Vibhuti is eternal abode of the Lord. The Leela Vibhuti is also eternal, exists, and Nitya Vibhuti also eternal, but the spiritual world specifically called as Nitya Vibhuti because it doesn't go through a creation and destruction, whereas the material world constantly goes through creation and destruction, Srishti and Pralaya. Now let's try to understand the spiritual world, Nitya Vibhuti. The Nitya Vibhuti possesses only one guna, and that is Sattva Guna. There is no trace of Rajoguna or Tamoguna. Therefore, the Nitya Vibhuti is known as Shuddha Sattva, that which possesses pure Sattva Guna alone. There is no mix of Rajoguna and Tamoguna. When Sattva Guna mixes with Rajoguna and Tamoguna, it is called as Mishra Sattva, which is nothing but the Prakriti, the material world. Whereas the Nitya Vibhuti, there is no mix of these other 2 lower gunas. It is purely Sattva Guna. Therefore, it is called as Shuddha Sattva, where the 2 gunas, Rajas and Tamas, are absent forever. There was not a time that it was present there and later it disappeared, or there will not be a time where these Rajas and Tamas will come into existence in the spiritual world. That will never happen. Therefore, the Nitya Vibhuti, the spiritual world, is known as Shuddha Sattva. Thing that need to be noted here is that Sattva Guna is present in the spiritual world and also present in the material world, both in Nitya Vibhuti and in Leela Vibhuti. But the difference is that in the material world, that Sattva Guna is mixed with the Rajoguna and Tamoguna. And in the spiritual world, the Sattva Guna is pure by itself without mix of the two gunas. When we say there is no mix of those two gunas, it doesn't mean that two gunas exist, but it is just a Sattva Guna which is not being mixed with Rajoguna and Tamoguna. They never exist. Rajoguna and Tamoguna never exist in the spiritual world. And this is the Lakshana, the essential quality or a nature of spiritual world, is that there is purely Sattva Guna only. And this spiritual world is made of Shuddha Sattva. Just like how a house is made of bricks, woods, etc. Likewise, the spiritual world is completely made of Shuddha Sattva. So if we have to define the spiritual world, then it is that which is different from the Prakriti, which has three gunas but possesses Sattva Guna, which means it differentiates from the material world by saying so because it doesn't have the Rajoguna and Tamoguna. Whereas if we have to define the material world, then it is that which has the mix of Sattva, Rajas and Tamo gunas. The second definition of Nitya Vibhuti, the spiritual world, is that place where avidya, which is nothing but our past karma, is completely removed. Avidya has different meanings. Avidya means ignorance, or which is opposite to knowledge. Avidya means considering body to be Atma. Avidya also means karma, which is papa karma and punya karma. As long as a living entity is in this dark material world, he is in conditional life. He is covered by this avidya in the form of punya karma and papa karma. It is only when this living entity reaches the spiritual world by cutting through this perverted tree of this material world, he becomes liberated. He becomes liberated there by getting rid of the karmas. But just by going to the heaven to drain few punya karma and then going to hell to drain few papa karma is not going to help one to attain mukti, liberation. They will have to be born again into this world and suffer or enjoy the rest of their karmas. It is only when the Jivatma, the living entity, reaches the spiritual world called Nitya Vibhuti, he will be able to completely, without any balance, get rid of all the karmas. Then there is no chance for his coming back here into this material world. When one understands who he is, who is the Supreme Lord, what are the means by which one can attain the spiritual world, by knowing the difference between the material world and the spiritual world, and give up the mentality of wanting to lord over the material energy of the Lord, but want to enter into the spiritual world to become an associate of the Supreme Lord, will engage in devotional service through the process of bhakti and by the process of sharanagati. These are the ways by which one can reach the river that divides the Leela Vibhuti and Nitya Vibhuti, known as Viraja Nadi. When one reaches this river called Viraja, he dips into this river, and a personality by name Amanavan lifts that Jivatma out of that Viraja Nadi, and that's when this Jivatma becomes fully free of any trace of karmas. And there he enjoys eternal bliss, eternal life and full knowledge. So we learn two lakshanams of the spiritual world. Number one, it is not mixed with rajas and tamas. It is Shuddha Sattva. Number two, that which completely destroys one's karma. And this spiritual world is made of Shuddha Sattva, and everything that's present in the spiritual world, like the Kopuram, Asana, different places present in the spiritual world, everything is made of this Shuddha Sattva. A question may arise that why one needs to accept that there is a spiritual world, because different schools of thoughts has different ideas about what liberation means. Let's address this question in our next session. Namaste. Hare Krishna.